This video is brought to you in part by Mantis Sleep. More on them in a bit. The best Nintendo platformer in recent memory came out on PlayStation 5 a few months back, and in addition to giving that system a game, it also brought a key thought to my mind. I would insult Xbox next just to make it even, but I think they do that enough already. See, Astro Bot has what's sort of become a staple of the modern 3D platformer in the last 15 or so years. A final Gauntlet level, unlocked only when you've completed just about everything else in the game. It's your big final hurrah, both a thank you for enjoying an incredible game to its fullest, as well as a mastery challenge. In fact, I would call it a Grand Mastery Challenge. Mario Galaxy 2's Grandmaster Galaxy is where I would argue the Collectathon completion bonus jumped from a fun little gag to an actual dare from the developers. Astro Bot's Great Master Challenge is only the most recent of these final gauntlets in 3D platformers inspired by Grandmaster Galaxy, and it got me thinking about all of the others, which ones are the best or most difficult, and I decided to go back and play all the memorable ones to figure out which one I think is the coolest. And believe it or not, it's a level that I think just about none of you have played, because even I sure as hell didn't until now. So what is the best Grandmaster Galaxy level? Let's run through some history and talk about it. Oh, I should say this video could have also been titled Insane Man Comes Back to Half a Dozen Platformers After Several Years Away and Warms Up Using the Absolute Hardest Levels, but that one didn't roll off the tongue quite as well, and YouTube's got a character count, so yeah. Now, I've already defined what I'm calling a final gauntlet here, but there are a couple notes I should probably hit on. One is that 2D platformers, of course, have had these sorts of secret final challenges for decades, hidden behind, for example, finding all of the Kong letters in Donkey Kong Country, or in Yoshi's Island, shaking baby Mario until he stops crying, I think. I don't know, I never really cared for Yoshi's Island. Even as recently as last year, Mario Wonder's Gauntlet Challenge changed with the times, naming itself after every editor, designer, or high school English student's projects. But these have mostly been covered to death by now, and it's not quite as easy to define the secret final challenge in 2D games. I mean, we're not going to call them World D4s or Funky, no relation. The actual unlock criteria can tend to vary more, and picking a favorite from a wider pile of both 2D and 3D games is far more likely to get me shot. What I'll say super quickly about 2D concepts for this final challenge level is that the titular impossible lair from Yooka-Laylee's criminally underappreciated second game is maybe the coolest one to me. This behemoth 20+ minute final level is unlocked at the very beginning, and you can challenge it whenever you wish. The catch being that, like many of these gauntlet levels, there aren't checkpoints, so good luck doing this with only one hit point. However, as you play the rest of the game and get the Power Star equivalent for completing each level, you'll gain one extra hit for this level, essentially letting you choose how difficult the impossible lair will end up being. It's a genius, self-moderated difficulty curve, and even if you 100% the game, this thing is still gonna be a struggle. Honestly, any reason to mention how good Impossible Lair is worth doing, and Impossible Lair also has a 3D overworld, so you could still argue this sorta counts if you really want to be that person. I don't, but you should still play this game. The other note I have about this definition I'm making up here that you should definitely cite to all your friends in forum arguments, or whatever, I don't care, is that completion bonuses, final levels, and final gauntlets aren't exactly the same thing. Mario 64's got a completion bonus. You get all 120 stars and you get to Yoshi. Same with Sonic Adventure 2. If you collect every emblem and A rank every stage, you get to Yoshi. The 3D Green Hill Zone level is also a nice bonus on top of that, but I think everybody would agree that something like that isn't a challenging gauntlet. Mario Sunshine's got the infamous postcard for 120 shines, and if we're being real, if you've gotten to that point in the game, Yoshi's already you multiple times. Meanwhile, the Spyro trilogy tends to lean more towards that final celebration vibe that SA2 would later end up hitting on with that 3D Green Hill Zone level. An easy romp through a theme park or occasionally hating your life by skateboarding, but otherwise it's just an easy little you did it bonus just to give you a bunch of extra gems and make you feel cool. None of those three Spyro levels really function as a final mastery challenge of the game, and even the Crash games tend to have their super hard challenge levels tucked off to the side of the second or third to last level, not necessarily its own final level, accessible if you have a specific set of collectibles, but again, not necessarily full completion. Now, again, if you pressed me, those would probably count, but I'm squishy and weak, so please don't touch me. Super Mario Galaxy 1 sort of took two distinct half steps towards this idea of throwing a 100% final gauntlet level into the 3D Mario saga. One of those half steps is the Grand Finale Galaxy, only unlocked when you've gotten all 120 stars as Mario, beaten Bowser again as Mario after that to unlock Luigi, and then gotten all 120 stars as Luigi. This level itself is absolutely more of a completion bonus, or maybe something in the vein of Spyro if you really stretch it, sending you running through the opening town level once again, but this time without Bowser attacking. You just get to walk around the town, talk to people, and collect 100 purple coins to unlock the 121st star. The actual warp point into this stage is hidden on the dark side of the Fidget Spinner Galaxy, itself a series of 3 bonus levels that you would have had to complete twice to get each one's power star as both Mario and again Luigi. However, you can't even unlock each of these levels until you've found its respective green star hidden somewhere in the game. These trial stages themselves are certainly a step up in challenge compared to the rest of Galaxy 1, which tends to be much easier than the other 3D Mario games, but these challenges are also all motion-based, more challenging upgrades of the manta ray surfing, ball rolling, and bubble blowing gimmicks present throughout Galaxy's levels. I'll say now that my old Wii has long since been lost to time, and I actually haven't loaded this game up on Switch to have done 2 full playthroughs just for this bit or anything, so pulling up a save entirely legally and playing this with my Wii's patented DualSense controller took a lot of the fangs out of these challenges. And mind you, that's not a complaint or a critique. These levels were not super fun on a Wii remote, and even those of us most used to the occasional jankiness of even the most polished motion controls can probably admit to appreciating how much these stages' difficulty is simply tied to the fact that those controls weren't as polished as our muscle memory would lead us to believe. That's also not a knock on the rest of the game, where Mario's actual controls are still great, although I will say that of the games on this list that I did come back to cold, Galaxy being the oldest, it did take the longest to warm me back up to the game feel of this and its sequel. Anyway, this Planet of Trials is necessary for full completion, and it's also 3 separate challenges that lead to a New Game Plus of sorts that then leads to the real completion bonus. Nobody's going to look at their 117 star total and think they're done, so again, this is more like 2 separate half steps, or perhaps a weaker version of the 2D Mario game's bonus worlds, rather than one real step towards the Grandmaster Galaxy concept we all now know and hopefully love. You can definitely tell what the team was going for, though. You can see the vision because they even thank the player with a heartfelt message upon completion of Grand Finale Galaxy. It says, "We connect 24 error." How thoughtful. Super Mario Galaxy 2 would of course ramp this up, with its Grandmaster Galaxy coming at the end of the game's World S. This entire world, which never actually fully hit me until putting it in writing just now, that Galaxy 2 puts galaxies inside worlds, which I don't think Nintendo knows how space works. This entire world is full of progression gates, with each level requiring you to have collected more and more total stars from both this world's galaxies and prior world's galaxies. Again, I just have to point out the world star galaxy hip-hop scaling here is it's all wrong and backwards. However, Grandmaster Galaxy takes it a step beyond, requiring all 240 stars, which includes the game's 120 hidden green stars, which themselves only unlock in the first place after you've gotten the first 120 stars. The first Galaxy had a Planet of Trials, this one has a Trial of Patience. But once you get all 240 stars, you're treated to what the game calls the ultimate test. From using the Wiimote's pointer for some hot and sweaty 2D Yoshi showing you what the reward really was in Mario 64 action, to the now trademark flip switch and sentry beam combo that almost every subsequent Mario Gauntlet has had, to a Cloud Mario Wind Maze once again in 2D, this one felt like it was going to take me just as long as I had remembered. But honestly, and this comes down to coming in cold more than anything, the Yoshi part at the very beginning actually took me the longest and caused way over half of my deaths, since my Wiimote's IR sensor was oddly DualSense shaped, and I had to get used to pointing that thing at an imaginary sensor bar on my definitely not computer. I was surprised at how quickly I got through this once I got that Yoshi grapple spacing down. The flip switch section and the maze were relatively easy, you just have to keep yourself calm and not overthink it. The hardest part from that point on is right after, with some tight platforming across those red-blue panels that flip when you do a spin attack, as well as across those shrinking green platforms, all while dodging more lasers and enemy attacks. From there, it's just about being careful with the gravitational pull star mechanic as you guide Mario through a maze of enemies and electrified wires, and then, at least for me, an easy enough final sprint to the finish where you're fighting and or probably mostly dodging a bunch of Hammer Bros. I use the phrase easy enough because Grandmaster Galaxy itself actually keeps you with Galaxy's standard 3-hit health bar and features checkpoints at points between the challenges. Since messing up on the Yoshi section at the very start means you might as well fall and restart, I pretty consistently got to the Pulstar section with at least one gimme hit, which was very helpful since I was getting used to the Pulstars once again in real time. Hell, that section even has coins to replenish you, so outside of a couple dumb oopsies where I overshot a jump or this happened, getting back here was pretty trivial. What I thought would take me dozens of white-knuckled grip on the controller tries didn't take me more than essentially a warm-up round. Of course, Galaxy 2's also got a prankster comet for this stage called the Perfect Run, which you unlock by finding the hidden comet medal in Grandmaster Galaxy and having 9,999 star bits in the bank. Same level, only now you've got only one hit, zero room for error. It took me 11 minutes, and aside from royally messing up the Yoshi opening again and again for the first 7-ish minutes of that, I only failed once the entire rest of the way. It not being quite as difficult as I remember it being doesn't mean it's not a hell of a fun level, mind you. I still really adore Grandmaster Galaxy for organically including a lot of the best of Galaxy 2 into this one challenge, one that doesn't feel particularly unfair at that. Now, if they'd saved that Yoshi bit until the very end, I would be singing a different tune for sure. To break up some of the Mario here, because the vast majority of these are Mario, given that the last decade and a half has been pretty bereft of traditional 3D platformers otherwise, I want to jump to Mario Galaxy 3. Well, actually Mario Galaxy 4. Astro Bot's VR game is more like Galaxy 3, but that one didn't have a final gauntlet. Its challenges were split off into a bite-sized asteroid belt. Now, I've talked about both Rescue Mission and the new Astro Bot game recently, so if you want to get a better feel of either, if you haven't played them or what have you, go check out my videos on them. But one of the things I held off from gushing about was the new game's Great Master Challenge. Now, for those that haven't played Astro, its core mechanics are simple even by Mario standards. He's got one hit point, a jump, a punch, a charged spin attack, and in lieu of a double jump, he has a little laser feet hover attack as a holdover from his VR days, so that players could see exactly where they were landing, regardless of where the camera's perspective was. Now, that last bit adds a good bit of challenge at times, as you have to be careful whether you actually want to hover or not. Sometimes the floor may be made of brittle glass, and hovering to avoid a hazard or kill an enemy could also kill the platform on which you're trying to land. Generally, Astro's varied gameplay has come from his little backpack gadgets tied to a specific level. One of them, for example, is the same Cloud Mario power from Galaxy 2, except that you could suck up different liquids to change the type and shape of the platform that you spawn. Team Asobi tends to cycle through these power-ups relatively frequently, essentially aiming to squeeze all of the juice out of each power in as few uses as possible before players risk even getting remotely close to boredom one, and then they move on to a cool new power and build a whole new set of levels around that one. Astro's final level, the Great Master Challenge, pulls away from all of those power-ups and relies just on your pure platforming skills, a fitting conclusion to the prior triangle, square, circle, and X-Dot cross challenge stages that you find in some worlds, which in this game are Galaxies. See? Was that so hard? Now, sidebar, you activate these face button challenges via a Super Mario World-styled Switch Palace, and I know that there are people from Team Asobi that watch my stuff, so I just have to voice aloud my hope that a future Astro game actually uses those Switch Palaces to activate hidden paths throughout a bunch of levels. It's right there. It even seems like there's meant to be a completion check on you having activated those switches, since the door to this Great Master Challenge and the opening parts of the challenge itself use those face button platforms. But in reality, you need to have found every puzzle piece in the game in order to build the giant golden Astro statue. Then you need to have rescued at least 300 bots scattered throughout all of the other levels, this game's Power Star collectible, so that they can team up to build a ramp up to space where this stage is hidden. I would say all 300, but at the time of recording, there are 314 bots you could collect prior to this. 10 more from that free speedrun stage DLC they added, as well as the 4 Astro's Playroom bots they added to the PS5 pack-in demo game in the lead up to this game. Those 4 Playroom bots are even a fun save transfer bonus, or maybe they're a trophy check, I'm not quite sure. But if you have them in that game, or you have the trophies, they'll show up in the overworld here for you to collect, and I kinda just like that. So anyway, here's where I get to follow up on all of this texture for folks that might be unfamiliar with these games, by saying that this is by far the easiest of the Grandmaster Galaxy stages. From the moment I started my first try to the moment I rescued the final bot in this level, well, the only bot in this level, there's only one, it took me 6 minutes. That's not a testament to how much of a sick hardcore gamer I am, although similar Nintendo-pilled nerds like me expressed a similar, "that was fun, but that's it," sort of thought. And to be fair, even as I was breezing through it, it did make sense to me that this would be shorter, though I still was half expecting it to be going for another 5+ minutes after I got to the end. When I interviewed Astro Bot's director a few months back, one of the key points that he highlighted was the team recognizing that the standard PlayStation player isn't exactly as tuned into platformers anymore, and that this game would also be the first game for a ton of kids out there based on the feedback they'd gotten from Playroom and the fact that parents during focus tests were expressing excitement in introducing their kids to gaming proper with this one. He was also caught off guard when I mentioned how quick this final went by for me, so with how receptive to feedback Asobi has been, I'm anticipating they're gonna get pretty devious next time. But none of this game's really difficult though, aside from those face button challenge stages, and even those are intended to be usually no longer than a minute to try and hit on that right blend of frustratingly challenging, but you can see the end right there, so don't give up. By this point, you've already seen on screen most of the stage in action, so I'm not going to go to great lengths to describe it. It's a super fun little level, and it's one I wanted more of because of how well designed it is. I can't super fairly compare it to the others in this video simply because I already had the muscle memory for this game, which is, I don't know, half of what took me so long in the other games. I mean, shit, Galaxy 2's perfect run only took me a few more minutes than this after warming up with Grandmaster Galaxy itself, so maybe that level's shorter if I'm more warmed up, who knows. But for what it is, I think it's a great example of this kind of level when done for a less hardcore platformer audience. A great way to start teaching or reminding those players and hopefully restart that itch so that at least some of them go over to the Switch that almost all of them already own and start doing Mario Sunshine's Floodless levels or something, I don't know. It also has an absolutely perfect cameo bot at the very end to send the game off with a bang, and honestly, the moment of me seeing that cameo and just bursting out into laughter, that does a ton of heavy lifting for me. Now, before we get back to Mario, I do want to talk about another one of my favorite non-Nintendo platforming games, Mantis Sleep, the sponsor of today's video. Is it a platforming game? You can't prove it's not. So this is not an exaggeration, it's not part of any ad copy. I have been using my Mantis Sleep masks just about every night since we first worked together over a year ago, and from what some of you have told me, you have too. So A, I'm really glad they helped, and B, thank you, because they're back. For the longest time, I was rocking the Manta Silk because it hit just the perfect combination for me of comfort as a side sleeper, complete and total blackout, and not feeling too warm or having to reposition it a bunch if I tossed and turned. Most recently though, I've been trying out the Mantis Sound, which has an adjustable set of Bluetooth headphones sewn into the outer mask. I figured it'd be useful during long flights or trips, or if I just want to listen to something as I'm taking a nap without worrying about my earbud falling out and my dog trying to eat it. He specifically likes earbuds. I've been impressed with how good this mask is at giving you clear audio without others around you hearing it. Even at its loudest setting, you would have to really listen in to hear what videos or music your partner uses as a lullaby. Spoilers, it's me. Between the variety of masks available, the adjustable headphone positioning on this one and the adjustable eye cup placement on all of Manta's masks, these things are easy to mold into exactly the most comfortable fit for you. Best of all, Manta won't break the bank, especially this month with a number of holiday deals throughout, giving you 15% off or more, and an added 10% off just for my viewers here if you use the code GOLDENBOLT at checkout. It's the kind of thing that's a perfect holiday gift for yourself or your loved ones, especially those that struggle the most with sleep or just really need something to help them when they take naps. A great nap or great sleep, that makes the entire rest of your day better, and you can never pay too much for that. But with Manta and the code GOLDENBOLT, you won't have to either, so click the link below and treat yourself. Thanks again to Manta for sponsoring, and now, back to the video. Now, jumping back to Mario, I'll take a mea culpa here and fully admit that I had zero plans to go back and do Mario 3D Land's final level, World 8 Crown. Partly because that game is pretty simple overall, it's not really that difficult, especially if you use the returning Tanuki suit as you probably have throughout the entire rest of the game, and it wasn't even that memorable a game even before 3D World usurped it, but I mainly wasn't planning on going back to it because the criteria for unlocking that final level is a bit ridiculous even compared to Galaxies. To unlock World 8 Crown, you need to have all 5 stars on your save file's little stat screen, which means beating the entire game and every prior bonus stage at least once with both Mario and Luigi, collecting all of the star medals throughout the game, and also getting a gold flag on every stage by hitting the top of the flagpole when you finish the level. Plus, with no easy way to capture 3DS footage, I would have had to install an emulator, and come on, I would never do that. If you do play that level raw though, with no Tanuki suit, kudos to you for taking on the added challenge. Now, Mario 3D World, on the other hand, this was the one for me. I remember exactly where I was when I called this game stupid during its first reveal, because I wanted Mario Galaxy 3, despite me not having played Galaxy 2 at the time. I wanted a real Mario, and sometime around the second trailer, I came to my senses and realized that this was the game that was probably going to make me buy a Wii U. Plus, I always tended to main Luigi, and this was the year of Luigi, which Nintendo unfortunately announced right before learning what Luigi had done. I don't know what it was about 3D World that just hits different in my mind, but it captured that whimsy that 3D Land was trying to go for, while also hitting on some really fun challenges that I never really got out of the super easy Galaxy 1. It's fun with friends, it's fun alone, and I remember how accomplished I felt when I beat Champions Road after easily an hour or two of trying, and at that, I did it without the Tanuki suit or the golden cat suit that lets you turn invincible. I didn't do that this run, I'll admit, because 3D World took quite a while to get used to after playing a few levels of the Switch remaster back when it came out, but otherwise not having played this game itself in 11 years. I was on that Bowser's Fury train. I know the controls feel a good bit smoother on Switch, but at this point, I was committed to the bit of playing these games' final gauntlets cold, and having to essentially 100% this game on Switch would have been a cop-out. Champions Road is unlocked in a pretty similar manner to 3D Land's final level, only this time without the need to play every level as multiple characters, because my god, that would have made this unbearable. Here, you've got to get all the green stars in every stage, which aren't nearly as hidden here as they were in Galaxy 1 or Galaxy 2. They're more like the Yoshi coins in Mario World, for example. And additionally, you've got to find the Miiverse stamp in every stage, rest in peace Miiverse, and get the gold flagpole again. Your heart might drop when you see that there are 3 green stars in this level itself, but that's just a jump scare. They're all fairly easy to get, but imagine if you missed one though. I would say that there are more distinct sections of Champions Road than pretty much any other Mario Gauntlet in this video, and what's more, you usually won't feel 100% confident in your ability to get past any of them unscathed. From dodging charging chucks while darting across 2 rows of 1-block wide blocks to a series of those alternating blocks that blink in and out of existence on a rhythm, while also deviously sneaking in a run of these blocks where you've probably got a high jump in place for a cycle before continuing, to dodging spikes and fuzzies while on a moving platform, just praying you don't get hit so that you can hang on to your costume of choice. It's all just the right blend of thrilling and infuriating. I can't tell you how many times, back in the day, not this time, I knew better this time, that I got antsy and overcorrected on the absolutely evil dash panel section right near the very end, but I can tell you how I felt when I finished it, when I overcame Champions Road. Good. I felt good. It's my storytelling skills that keep you here. There's one more Mario level left before I probably disappoint you with the coolest one, but you're not allowed to skip ahead and you've got to promise to hear me out, okay? First, Mario Odyssey's Darker Side of the Moon, unlocked when you obtain an absolutely paltry 500 moons. I don't think I actually did this level until I had almost all of the 800 plus moons prior to that, but that's because I'm a crazy person. And when I came back to record footage for this, at first I was thinking I misremembered, because Darker Side starts out with this big celebration featuring a ton of characters from throughout the game, all with New Donk's City Hall sitting in the background. I talked to all of the characters, thanking Mario for the journey so far. I remembered these nearly decade-old memories. I got a little choked up about how the Jump Up Superstar song and those summer ads kickstarted the second silo of the Switch's monster first year, and about all that it and Breath of the Wild had essentially single-handedly done to revitalize the perception of this company that just months before people weren't sure could keep managing in the HD era. I felt my cold heart warm up ever so briefly thanks to those memories, and thinking about how lucky we've been for Nintendo to have just executed an essentially non-stop banger of a console generation. And then my Switch controller's stick started drifting and I remembered why my heart's cold. All the while I'm thinking, maybe Dark Side was the challenging level, and I just forgot Darker Side even existed, or that it was a celebratory completion bonus and nothing more? Then I got into the underground magma cavern, and memories started dripping back in. Oh yeah, this part, I thought as I ran through the obstacle course and the moving conveyor belt that always reminded me of Mario 64, probably intentionally. I was having a blast. There are health refills to bring you back up to Odyssey's usual health count of 3, and there are even big hearts sprinkled throughout the level that'll double it to 6 if you look hard enough. And then I had to take control of the little lava bubble with Cappy, and I remembered that I had absolutely zero recollection of how all of the different creatures felt to control. Creatures I was probably going to have to use. With no checkpoints in a 15-minute level, this meant a lot of relearning on the fly. And by that I mean I used the flying lizard to skip most of this level. Moving on. Okay, that's actually not true, I did do the whole level, but while I was banging my head on the table trying to figure out what I was forgetting about the little slingshot bird, I found out about this skip and I had to record it too. This run reminded me a lot of what I loved about Odyssey thanks to its constant variety and transformations, in this level's case making sure to essentially take you across the entire game's, well, Odyssey by way of just those powers. But replaying this here also distilled into essentially a single point a lot of why I've continued hoping for an Odyssey sequel that does what Galaxy 2 did, that adds some more substantive platforming challenges, or challenges just using all of these mechanics in slightly more depth rather than just having a bunch of breadth. Darker Side gives you only a couple Mario challenges in this quarter hour or so of game, namely this lava jungle gym area at the start, and later the classic dodge all the lasers that keep setting one another off thing, but otherwise you're essentially jumping from power to being inside Yoshi again, all in interesting or challenging enough ways, mind you, but when Mario feels this incredible to control, and I'm remembering all of that in real time, spending a bunch of time as a Fork or Bowser, each with one or two things they can do, doesn't quite hit the same. It's still a wonderful level, and probably the best so far besides maybe 3D World at actually distilling the journey you've taken so far down to one single stage, but man, I just want Odyssey 2 now. So if none of these is the coolest implementation of a final Gauntlet or a Grandmaster Galaxy sort of level based on my very specific definition of a 3D final Gauntlet level in a platforming video game, and if you have your own definition, shut the f*** up, who could possibly live up to that hype? I'm one of only 7 or 8 people that even played this game, and I didn't know about it until Brody, one of my cohorts over at our podcast, Crub, go check that out or else, suggested this when I mentioned this video idea. Only fitting that the one level I'd put even above Mario 3D Worlds is from 3D World 2. I'm talking about the Knitted Night Trials from Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and it's not just the coolest because you can play as Clank, though that does help. Now hear me out, part of why Sackboy is what I think might be the coolest is that it has 2 Final Gauntlet type levels. Besides the Knitted Night Trials, there's the sadly fittingly named Little Big Finale in the final bonus world, locked until you've obtained a minimum of 275 Dreamer Orbs, requiring you to get just about every single one of these collectibles in every main stage, as well as some in the side levels like these Knitted Night Trials, the time trial stages, or some co-op exclusive levels. It's not a painfully challenging level or anything, especially since it has checkpoints, but it's a decent final gauntlet all the same, taking you through a ton of the game's different mechanics, from falling platforms to these little mushroom dudes that you hit to spawn temporary platforms that fade away, sort of just the natural evolution of what you'd expect from either Little Big Planet or 3D Mario games in that vein of 3D World. I had never unlocked a Little Big Finale before, so I did have a bit more warm-up in this game technically than I did compared to the other ones, but I was also shocked at how goddamn well Sackboy controls in this game. I'm surprised I could even forget. Even as somebody who had a soft spot for A Big Adventure, I couldn't believe how easy it was to get right back into the flow state of this game. Sackboy is functionally a similar game to 3D World if that game's playable character was Yoshi, flutter, jump, and all. Bet you didn't think there was a payoff to all those Yoshi mentions, but here we are. You also have a roll move very similar to Odyssey's, which in turn means you can do a jump and then an air dive into a roll to build momentum, and from there you can just let it rip. And with 2 HP, you can always take one gimme hit before you really have to start worrying. Now that said, my warm-up came first in the Knitted Night Trials, the true Grandmaster Galaxy of Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Through 15 of Sackboy's stages, you'll find a secret Rubik's Cube sort of item that unlocks one of these trials, each of which has a bronze, silver, and gold time that rewards a Dreamer Orb towards that 100% completion. There is some shortcuts you can take, as well as stopwatch pickups to collect that'll figuratively and actually take seconds off your timer, your usual time trial stuff to that end. Also, this level's music is by deadmau5, which... Huh. I had done some of these Knitted Knight trials in my original playthrough, and in short, these are just super challenging micro stages that'll play a specific mechanic or theme all set on this gold sequin sort of backdrop, following the game and really the entire Little Big Planet franchise's arts and crafts theme. Once you've completed each of these Knitted Knight trials in some way, even if you just get the bronze time, the 16th and final challenge unlocks. And it wasn't until partway through this challenge that I realized what was happening, because deja vu from those levels that I hadn't even thought about in almost 4 years had finally started to set in. See, each of the first 15 of these levels is a section of this final 16th one, all seamlessly coming together to go from these 2-minute super frustrating but you see the end sorts of deals into this intimidating monstrosity of a level. No checkpoints, 2 hits, you got this. And even if you don't got this, the genius in segmenting these challenges out ahead of time throughout your entire playthrough is that the player has already seen what challenges are ahead. They've proven that they can do them, and if they're especially struggling with, let's just say, I don't know, the 11th section, the team can ensure that players could go right back to that section and get some practice in. For many, that's the most frustrating part of these Gauntlet-style levels. I could do the first, 60%, I just want to be able to replay that specific part I'm stuck on so that I can get the hang of it and master it. Now, make no mistake, practice doesn't make it all that much easier, just more familiar, so that you don't stress as much and your hands don't get quite as sweaty. I still spent hours on this level. I don't even want to know how long. And I was mostly stubborn, to be fair, because I had gotten super far on the first or second try, as you usually tend to do, and that meant to me that I could definitely make it. Eventually, I did take a break to go unlock and do that little big finale level, and to practice some of the sections up ahead. And this is where I realized in horror what all 4 of us that have actually finished this wonderful challenge have dealt with. See, remember that thought I mentioned about having a heart attack seeing that there were green stars in Champions Road in 3D World? This game does that, but worse. One of the Knitted Knight trials plays a joke on the player, putting the finish line to the trial behind you, forcing you to collect stopwatches while moving around on these horrid motion-controlled floating platforms, trying to run the clock down before the goal catches up to you and ends your run, and hoping against all hope that you've done enough to unlock the gold time. Now imagine playing the full complete Knitted Knight challenge and being right on the cusp of the gold time, only to get to the very end of this complete behemoth of a level, to get to this section and have the finish line tackle you to keep you at silver. It's a terrifying thought, just like the Champions Road jump scare, only worse, because it's not just doing the level again, finding a secret, and taking your time. You have to play the entire level perfectly all over again, and somehow better, watching the timer tick its way towards that silver or bronze time, knowing the sweatiest section is one entirely dependent on the intentionally worst bit of this game's controls. Once again, imagine if they had put Yoshi at the end of Grandmaster Galaxy and not the start. This level takes everything we've learned about the Grandmaster Galaxy concept and uses it to scare you. And, thankfully, that's just another part of this 2-part joke that the Sackboy developers played on you, because the finish line in this version of the Knitted Knight challenge actually jumps over you, giving you as much time as you want to collect all of the stopwatches, take a breath, and get yourself well under the gold time. The Knitted Knight trials are a perfect way to teach the player, to build suspense, and to play a couple little jokes on you in good fun, all at the same time without taking away anything from this level's genuinely enjoyable and also infuriating challenge. Not to mention, this game has a whole different finale on top of that, which also serves as a more traditional final gauntlet. And all of that together is why I think Sackboy has the neatest version of this Grandmaster Galaxy sort of challenge. I also wanted to open a dialogue on this very specific sort of level that platforming dorks like me just can't get enough of. The 3D platformer evolved so quickly as the industry rapidly shifted that in many ways we moved from collectathon completion bonuses in the vein of your favorite Super Nintendo games to some studios turning that 100% bonus into its own joke they would play on players for, I guess, liking the game enough to keep playing it so much, and then we jumped ahead to an era where Nintendo was pretty much the only one making high-quality, traditional 3D platformers. Even in recent years, as we've entered the indie and retro revival boom that's led to more of the genre, it hasn't culminated in too many more of this, again, admittedly very specific kind of level. That's partly because a lot of the indies and revivals don't tend to be fully realized games until years after release because of Kickstarters or having to pay the bills, very understandable things, and because DLC has filled a lot of that gap for challenge stages in some cases. It should go without saying once again that this is not an all-inclusive list of this Grandmaster Galaxy Gauntlet stage either, depending on how you personally want to define it. You could argue that Crash's gem paths count, or at the very least Spyro 3's final world, or Ape Escape and countless other games putting their true ending behind 100%, or that Croc's true secret final boss inspired all of these, because it did. Croc inspires all. Hell, if you move this idea beyond just platformers, there are countless more. But don't do that, take that shit somewhere else. This is a platformer-only household today. And I'm almost certain that one of you is going to comment one that somehow didn't cross my mind even as I combed through my game collection writing down examples. I thank you in advance for adding to this list and reminding us all that I'm stupid. If you haven't given one or more of these games a chance and you have the means to, I cannot recommend enough that you do. The games themselves are of course all stellar, and if you've liked one of these games, you're probably gonna love them all. Let me know what your favorite Grandmaster Galaxy is in the comments as well. If you don't, I'm gonna tell Yoshi, and even if you think you're into that shit, you won't be. He doesn't cuddle after. As always, until next time, stay golden.